Rain hammered the jungle in relentless sheets, drenching every surface in its wake. The thick canopy did little to stop the downpour, the heavy droplets breaking through and splattering against the muddy earth below. AIien adjusted his hood, the soaked fabric doing little to shield him. He could barely see more than a few feet ahead, the dense foliage swallowing the path behind him the moment he took a step forward. He was alone out here, deep in the restricted zones claimed by the Vorthari, and he wasn't supposed to be here. A few years ago, this place had been untouched wilderness, one of Earth's last frontiers. Now, it belonged to the AIien settlers. The Vorthari had declared vast portions of the planet sacred, territories where humans were explicitly forbidden to tread. Treaties had been signed, agreements made. Breaking them came with severe consequences. AIien wasn't here to start trouble. He was here because of the signal. A faint distress beacon had been broadcasting intermittently for days, the message barely coherent. The voice had been distorted, laced with static, but one thing had been clear. It wasn't human. Someone out here needed help, and no one else had come to find them. The ground sloped downward into a shallow ravine, the terrain growing more treacherous. AIien moved carefully, boots sinking into the mud. The air was thick with the scent of damp earth and something sharper, animal musk. He had been in jungles before, both on Earth and off-world, and he knew what that meant. He wasn't alone. A branch snapped somewhere to his right. AIien stopped, his hand drifting instinctively toward the rifle slung across his back. He didn't draw it, didn't move. He barely even breathed. Silence. Then a growl. It was deep and guttural, reverberating through the thick air. AIien slowly turned his head toward the sound. Through the curtain of rain, he could just barely make out the massive silhouette lurking between the trees. It was a beast, easily over 8 feet tall at the shoulder, its body covered in sleek crimson scales that gleamed under the dim jungle light. Its 4 powerful legs ended in wicked, curved claws, each as long as a combat knife. The creature's elongated head was adorned with a thick, bony crest, and its golden eyes burned with a fierce, alien intelligence. And on its back sat a rider. She was Vorthari. Her skin was a deep violet hue, slick with rain, and her black, spiraled horns curved back over her skull like a crown. She wore armor, light but battle-worn, and her sharp silver eyes locked onto him with the weight of a predator sizing up prey. The creature beneath her rumbled, shifting its weight. Then she spoke. "You shall not pass, human." Her voice was low and commanding, each word carrying a sharp, guttural accent. She pulled back on the reins of her beast, keeping it still, but there was no mistaking the tension in its stance. It was ready to strike. AIien exhaled slowly, his hands still raised. He had expected something like this, but not this soon. "Not looking for trouble," he said, keeping his voice calm. "I just need to." "You are trespassing," she cut him off. "Turn back now, or you will die here." AIien's pulse pounded, but he held his ground. "I'm not here to fight. I picked up a distress signal. Someone sent it from this area." The Vorthari warrior didn't flinch, but her fingers tightened slightly on the reins. "You are lying," she said. AIien shook his head. "No, I'm not. The signal was weak, but I traced it here." He hesitated, watching her closely. "Was it you?" A flicker of something crossed her face. Too quick to name, but it was there. And then, just as fast, her expression hardened again. "I sent no distress call," she said firmly. She was lying. AIien wasn't sure how he knew, but he did. It was in the way her shoulders tensed, the brief pause before she spoke. Maybe she thought he was too ignorant to notice. Maybe she just didn't care if he did. Either way, the truth was clear, and it meant he was on the right track. Before he could press her further, the beast beneath her let out a low, guttural snarl. The sound sent a shiver down AIien's spine, primal instincts screaming at him to move. He forced himself to stay still. If he ran, the thing would be on him in seconds. "You are a fool," the Vorthari said. "You step where no human is permitted, and you expect mercy?" AIien met her gaze. "I expect answers." The words hung between them, and then, without warning, she moved. With a sharp tug of the reins, she spurred the beast forward. It lunged toward him in a blur of muscle and claws, closing the distance too fast. AIien barely had time to react before the creature's massive form barreled into him, knocking the air from his lungs. He hit the ground hard, the muddy earth cold against his skin. The beast loomed over him, its golden eyes burning like fire. AIien reached for his weapon, too late. A clawed foot slammed onto his chest, pinning him in place. He barely bit back a groan. The pressure wasn't enough to crush him. Not yet. But one wrong move, one wrong word, and it would be. The Vorthari warrior leaned forward in her saddle, staring down at him. Her silver eyes gleamed in the dim light. "You are unarmed," she noted. AIien gritted his teeth. "I didn't come here to fight." Silence. Then, to his surprise, she pulled back. With a sharp command, she urged her beast off of him, the massive creature stepping back with an almost reluctant rumble. AIien took a deep breath, rolling onto his side before pushing himself up. He half expected another attack. It never came. Instead, the Vorthari warrior tilted her head slightly, studying him in a way that made his skin prickle. "You are persistent," she murmured. AIien wiped the rain from his face. "I get that a lot." She was silent for a moment, then exhaled sharply. "You are not leaving," she said, not as a question but a fact. "No," she sighed, as if debating whether she should kill him anyway. Then, finally, she flicked the reins of her mount, turning it sharply. "Then follow," she commanded. And with that, she rode into the jungle, her beast's powerful legs carrying her forward with fluid grace. AIien hesitated for only a second before moving after her. He didn't know if he had just won something or lost. But either way, there was no turning back now. The jungle closed around them, thick with tangled vines and towering trees whose canopies blocked most of the remaining daylight. AIien followed as best he could, his boots sinking into the wet earth with each step. The Vorthari warrior rode ahead in silence, her beast moving with a predatory grace that made no sound despite its massive size. It was a creature built for the hunt, and she rode it like she was part of it. Neither spoke for a long time. The rain had slowed to a light drizzle, the rhythmic patter blending with the distant calls of unseen creatures. AIien kept his eyes on her back, watching the way she moved. Even on foot, he felt like the prey in this situation. He had met Vorthari before. Their kind had arrived on Earth nearly a decade ago, claiming select territories under a fragile peace agreement. Most humans never saw them up close, only their envoys, their diplomats, the warriors they allowed into select cities. But this one, she was different. There was something untamed about her, something dangerous, and yet she had not killed him. That meant something. AIien finally spoke. "Do you have a name?" She didn't answer at first. He wasn't sure she would at all. But then, without looking back, she said, "Zalera." He let the name settle in his mind. Fit her. Sharp, strong, unyielding. "You believe someone sent a distress signal," she said at last. It wasn't a question. "I know someone did," AIien replied. "And you know something about it." Zalera's shoulders tensed, ever so slightly. "You assume much. You're the one who just admitted it." She exhaled sharply through her nose. Not quite a laugh, but close. "You are bold, human," she muttered. "Perhaps foolish, but bold." AIien glanced at the jungle around them, at the narrow, twisting paths only she seemed to know. "Are you leading me somewhere? Or just deeper into the wilds so I get lost and die?" Zalera finally turned her head slightly, silver eyes gleaming in the dim light. "Perhaps both." He sighed. "Comforting." She didn't slow her pace, but after a long silence, she finally said, "The signal you heard. It was sent. But not by me." AIien frowned. "Then by who?" Zalera's grip tightened slightly on the reins. "My kin." His gut twisted. "They're in danger, aren't they?" She said nothing. That was answer enough. AIien picked up his pace, moving closer to her side. "Tell me what happened." Zalera hesitated for only a moment before speaking. "We were hunting. A group of us. The jungle is dangerous, even for the Vorthri. She tilted her head slightly. You humans believe we are mighty warriors, unbeatable. AIien had met enough of her kind to know that belief wasn't entirely wrong. Aren't you? Zalera's expression darkened. Not always. She fell silent for a moment, as if debating how much to tell him. Then she continued. Something attacked us. Not a creature of this world. Not one I have ever seen. AIien frowned. What was it? Zalera shook her head. I do not know. It was fast, strong. We fought, but it was relentless. She glanced at him then, her silver eyes sharp. 2 of my kin fell. 3 more fled into the jungle. One of them was injured. He sent the distress signal. AIien's pulse quickened. So he's still out there? If he lives, Zalera said flatly. He cursed under his breath. That signal had been weak. How long had it been since it was sent? You're looking for him, AIien said. That's why you're out here alone. Zalera didn't confirm it, but she didn't deny it either. AIien nodded to himself. Then I'm coming with you. She pulled the reins, bringing her beast to a sudden stop. AIien nearly stumbled as she turned to face him fully, her gaze narrowing. You assume I will allow this. You haven't stopped me yet, AIien pointed out. A tense silence stretched between them. The jungle felt smaller, the weight of her stare pressing down on him like a tangible force. Her beast rumbled softly beneath her, sensing the tension. Then, slowly, she exhaled. You are persistent, she muttered. Yeah, AIien said. I get that a lot. Zalera clicked her tongue, guiding her mount forward again. Stay close, she ordered. And if you slow me down, I will leave you behind. AIien smirked. I'll keep up. They moved deeper into the jungle, the air growing heavier, thick with the scent of wet earth and something else. Something metallic. Blood. Zalera stiffened. We are close. AIien's hand hovered near his weapon just in case. They pushed through a thick wall of vines, stepping into a small clearing. And there, slumped against the trunk of a fallen tree, was a figure. A Vorthri warrior. His armor was cracked, dark purple blood staining his side. His breathing was shallow, his horns dulled with exhaustion. But his eyes fluttered open at the sound of their approach. Zalera leapt from her mount, kneeling at his side. Varen, she breathed. The wounded warrior's gaze flickered toward her, then toward AIien. His voice was weak, barely a whisper. You brought a human? Zalera scowled. I did not bring him. He followed. Varen's gaze locked onto AIien. Despite his wounds, his expression held something close to amusement. Strange, he murmured. I thought humans were weak. AIien sighed. I get that a lot too. Varen coughed a rough, wet sound. Zalera's expression darkened. We need to move you, she said firmly. Can you stand? Varen shook his head. Not fast enough. AIien didn't like the way he said that. Why not? Varen's hand clenched weakly. Because it is coming back. The air grew still. Zalera was on her feet in an instant, eyes scanning the jungle. AIien followed her gaze, his fingers tightening around his weapon. Then, in the distance, a branch snapped. A deep, guttural growl slithered through the air. The beast wasn't far, and this time it knew exactly where they were. The jungle held its breath. The growl rippled through the air, low and menacing, vibrating through AIien's bones. It wasn't like any sound he had ever heard before. Deep, guttural, wet, like something ancient, something that had been hunting long before either humans or Vorthri ever set foot on this world. Zalera didn't hesitate. She pulled Varen up onto her beast with surprising strength, gripping him tightly as he slumped forward, barely holding on. Her silver eyes flicked toward AIien, sharp with warning. It is hunting us, she said. We move. Now. AIien didn't need to be told twice. They pushed forward, the jungle around them growing darker, denser. AIien's boots pounded against the wet earth as he ran alongside Zalera's beast. He could hear the injured Vorthri warrior's ragged breathing, the faint creak of Zalera's armor as she urged her mount into a faster pace. And behind them, the sound of something crashing through the underbrush. It was coming. AIien didn't look back. He could hear it well enough. Something massive, something moving far too fast for its size. He caught glimpses between the trees. A flash of slick, dark skin. A glint of something curved and jagged, limbs moving in unnatural, loping strides. Varen coughed, voice weak. It won't stop. Zalera gritted her teeth. Then we make it stop. They burst into a clearing, the trees momentarily giving way to open space. AIien knew instinctively that stopping here was a terrible idea. Too exposed, no cover. But Zalera was already moving, pulling on the reins, making her beast twist sharply in place. AIien skidded to a stop beside her, heart hammering. She slid off the beast's back in one fluid motion, her blades already in her hands. Her stance was solid, battle-ready. AIien's breath came fast. You want to fight it? Zalera's expression was hard. No choice. It will not stop chasing us. A branch snapped, then another, and then it stepped into the clearing. AIien had no words for the thing before him. It was tall, easily 10 feet, maybe more. Its body was sleek, dark, covered in some kind of glossy hide that shimmered in the dim jungle light. Its arms were longer than they should be, tipped with curved claws that dripped with something thick and black. But its head, that was the worst part. It had no eyes, no visible mouth, just a ridged, bone-like structure that split open, revealing layers of jagged, moving teeth. The thing clicked its jaws together once, twice. Then it lunged. Zalera was ready. She met it mid-stride, twisting out of the way as its claws raked through the air where she had just been. Her twin blades flashed, slicing along the creature's side. A hiss erupted from its throat, a sound more felt than heard. AIien barely had time to react before it turned toward him. His instincts kicked in. He dove to the side as one of its arms lashed out, slamming into the ground with enough force to split the earth beneath it. AIien rolled, came up on one knee, and pulled his sidearm in the same motion. He fired 3 shots center mass. The creature barely reacted. The bullets hit, but its hide absorbed them, like they were sinking into something not quite solid. The wounds closed just as fast as they appeared. AIien swore under his breath. Great, that's fair. Zalera didn't pause. She was a blur of motion, ducking, twisting, striking. Her blades were the only things that seemed to matter, cutting deep enough that the creature actually staggered back. But it wasn't enough. It was learning. The next time she struck, it dodged. Fast. Zalera's momentum threw her slightly off balance, just enough for the creature to retaliate. It slammed its arm into her side. She hit the ground hard. Zalera! AIien didn't think. He just moved. His weapon was useless. His fists, even more so. But there was one thing he had that the Vorthari didn't. Something the creature hadn't adapted to yet. AIien grabbed the flare from his belt, yanked the cap, and struck it hard against his palm. Light exploded into the darkness. The creature reeled back, its faceless head snapping toward the sudden glow. Its movements turned jerky, uncertain. The light hit its glossy skin, and for the first time, it hesitated. AIien's pulse pounded. That's right, you ugly bastard. You don't like light, do you? He didn't waste the moment. He hurled the flare straight at its head. It shrieked, a sound that sent a sharp, electric pain through his skull. Its body convulsed, the exposed, wet flesh where the flare had hit bubbling slightly, sizzling as if burned. Zalera was on her feet in an instant. She saw the opening, and she took it. Her blades flashed in the dim light, cutting deep. This time they mattered. The creature thrashed, its movements wild. But Zalera didn't stop. She moved with purpose, her strikes landing true. Then, with one final, brutal slash, she severed its head. The jungle fell silent. For a long moment, no one moved. Then, slowly, the body collapsed. Zalera stood over it, breathing heavily, her blades dripping with dark ichor. AIien swallowed hard, still gripping the spent flare like it was a lifeline. Varen let out a weak, raspy laugh from where he was slumped against the beast. That was unexpected. AIien let out a breathless chuckle, rubbing a hand down his face. Yeah, well, welcome to humanity. We improvise. Zalera turned to face him, her silver eyes catching the light just right. There was something there now, something different. She had seen him act without hesitation. She had seen him save her. For the first time since they met, she looked at him not with suspicion, but with something else. Something dangerous. Something intoxicating. You, she said slowly, are full of surprises, human. AIien held her gaze, a small, lopsided grin pulling at his lips. Stick around. You might like some of them. Zalera's lips twitched, almost a smirk. But before she could reply, Varen let out a pained groan. The moment shattered. Zalera was at his side instantly, examining his wounds with a sharp, focused expression. We need to move. Now. AIien nodded, shaking off the lingering adrenaline. Agreed. No telling if that thing had friends. Zalera glanced at him. You will ride with me. We make for my stronghold. AIien hesitated. Are you sure about that? Her silver eyes locked onto his, unyielding. You saved my life, AIien. The way she said his name, he felt it. Promise. A warning. Maybe both. He exhaled, then nodded. All right. Lead the way. As they rode into the jungle, AIien had the distinct feeling that his life had just changed forever. The journey to the Vorthari stronghold was a blur of movement and tense silence. AIien sat behind Zalera on her beast, one arm wrapped around her waist for balance, the other gripping his sidearm just in case something else decided to lunge out from the jungle. Varen, though weak, held on as best he could. His body slumped against Zalera's back as they rode. The jungle thinned out as they climbed higher into the hills, the oppressive canopy giving way to open air. The sky stretched wide above them, bathed in the deep purples and oranges of twilight. AIien had expected the Vorthari stronghold to be something out of a war film, dark, fortified, cold. What he saw instead made him pause. It wasn't a fortress. It was a city, carved into the cliffs. The Vorthari settlement was a breathtaking mix of natural stone and advanced technology. Towers of black metal wove seamlessly into the rock, glowing with soft violet energy. Waterfalls cascaded from hidden sources above, feeding into rivers that cut through the city's pathways. The air hummed with unseen energy, and in the distance, strange flying creatures glided between spires like birds at dusk. Zalera barely slowed as they entered the city. The Vorthari guards at the gate straightened upon seeing her, their eyes widening at the sight of Varen slumped against her. Whispers followed them, murmurs of shock, of questions, and of course of him. AIien could feel their stares boring into him, the only human in sight. An outsider, a trespasser. Zalera didn't stop until they reached what seemed to be a medical facility. The moment her beast halted, she dismounted in one fluid motion, already pulling Varen down with her. AIien followed, his legs stiff from the ride. Get him inside, Zalera ordered the medics. He needs stabilizers and a full scan. The healers rushed forward, carefully lifting Varen onto a hovering stretcher before whisking him away. AIien exhaled, finally letting some of the tension drain from his shoulders. That was close, he muttered. Zalera turned to him, her expression unreadable. You stayed. AIien raised an eyebrow. What, was I supposed to just run off into the jungle alone? No thanks. She studied him for a moment longer, then turned on her heel. Come with me. AIien hesitated. Where? She glanced over her shoulder. You are not leaving yet. Something in the way she said it sent a shiver down his spine. Not from fear, but from something far more dangerous. Curiosity, and something else. She led him through the city, past towering structures and silent onlookers. The deeper they went, the more ornate their surroundings became. AIien didn't miss the way the architecture shifted, from something purely functional to something almost regal. And then he understood. They weren't just heading toward a building. They were heading toward her home. Zalera stopped before a grand entrance, the doors flanked by guards in gleaming armor. With a single nod from her, they stepped aside. AIien swallowed hard. So, I'm guessing you're not just some random soldier. Zalera turned to him, silver eyes gleaming. You guessed that only now? AIien let out a dry chuckle. Hey, I've had a busy day. She smirked, a real smirk. Come inside, she said, stepping through the doorway. We need to talk. AIien followed, his heart pounding a little harder than before. The chamber she led him to was nothing like he expected. It wasn't a throne room or a war council hall. It was personal. Soft lighting cast long shadows across the curved walls. The air smelled of something faintly floral, and the furniture, though distinctly alien, was designed for comfort rather than intimidation. Zalera crossed the room and poured a deep blue liquid into 2 crystal-like cups. She handed one to AIien, who took it hesitantly. Drink, she said. He eyed the liquid. Is this going to kill me? Her lips twitched. Not unless you insult my ancestors. He took a cautious sip. The taste was unexpected. Cool, slightly sweet, with a hint of something almost spicy. It sent warmth through his body, but not in a bad way. All right, he admitted. Not terrible. Zalera took a sip of her own, then set her cup down. You could have left us. In the jungle. It would have been the safer choice. AIien shrugged. Not really my style. She stepped closer. You risked yourself to save me. And Varen. Even when you had no reason to. Yeah, well, he said, rubbing the back of his neck. I wasn't gonna just let you guys get ripped apart by that thing. Not after everything. Zalera was silent for a long moment. Then, she took another step forward. AIien suddenly realized just how close she was. The flickering light cast sharp angles on her face, highlighting the deep silver of her eyes, the faint markings along her skin. She was beautiful in a way that was fierce, untamed. You are an unusual human, she murmured. AIien chuckled, but it came out weaker than he intended. I get that a lot. Zalera tilted her head slightly, studying him like he was something new, something unexpected. And then, before he could think too much about it, she kissed him. It wasn't hesitant. It wasn't uncertain. It was deliberate, like she had already decided. Like this was a choice she had made long before this moment. For a second, AIien was too stunned to react. But then he did. His hand found her waist, pulling her just a little closer. Her warmth, her strength, it was real, and he wanted more of it. When she finally pulled back, her breath was warm against his lips. I do not know what happens next, she admitted. AIien smirked. Then I guess we'll just have to figure it out together. She studied him for a moment longer. Then slowly she nodded. Yes, she said. Together. And for the first time since setting foot in this jungle, AIien felt like he was exactly where he was supposed to be.